Good afternoon, Husky Pups. Here's Miss Bottone, and I am excited because we are going to finish the BFG book today, and I have two fun projects planned for you. So, chapter 23 questions. I hope you have these here. What was going on back in England as the Giants were being flown there? Why did the BFG bring a sack of snozcumbers with him to England? How did the Giants feel about being put in the hole? Draw a picture of the Giants in the hole. Are we ready? Feeding time. While the Giants were being captured, a tremendous bustle and hustle was going on back home in England. Every earth digger and mechanical contrivance in the country had been mobilizing to dig the colossal hole in which the 9 giants were permanently imprisoned. So once again, when you see the bubbles, that means I'm reading one of the answers to the questions. 10,000 men and 10,000 machines worked ceaselessly through the night under powerful arc lights, and the massive task was completed in only just in time. The hole itself was about twice the size of a football field and 500 feet deep. The walls were perpendicular, and engineers had calculated that there was no way a giant could escape once he had been put in. Even if all 9 giants were to stand on each other's shoulders, the topmost giant would still be some 50 feet from the top of the hole. The 9 giant-carrying helicopters hovered over the massive pit. The giants, one by one, were lowered to the floor, but they were still trustled up. Now came the tricky business of releasing them from their bonds. Nobody wanted to go down and do this because the moment a giant was freed, he would be sure to turn on the wrecked person who had freed him and gobble him up. As usual, the BFG had the answer. I told you before, giants never eating giants, so I was going to go down and I shall untie them myself before you could say Jack Robinson. With thousands of spectators, including the Queen, peering down into the pit, the BFG was lowered by a rope. One by one, he released the giants. They stood up, stretched out their limbs, and started leaping about in fury. Why is he putting us down here in this gruesome hole? They shouted at the BFG. Because you is guzzling human beings. I is always warning you not to do it, and you never taking a little bit of notice. Is that the case? Said Flush Lumpeater. I think we is guzzling you instead. The BFG grabbed the dangling rope and was hoisted out of the pit just in time. The great bulging sack he had brought back with him from Giant Country lay on top of the pit. What's in there? The Queen asked. The BFG put an arm in the sack and pulled out the gigantic black and white striped object the size of a man. Snozcumbers, he cried. This is the repulsive snozcumber, Majesty, and this is all we are going to give this disgusting giants from now on. May I taste it? The Queen said. Oh, no, don't, Your Majesty. It is tasting horrible. With that, he tossed the snozcumber down to the giants below. There's your supper. How much is on that? He fished out more snozcumbers from the sack and threw them down. The giants below howled and cursed. The BFG laughed. It serves you right for doing what you did. What will we feed them when the snozcumbers are all used up? The Queen asked. They is never being used up, Your Majesty. I will always bring back a sack of these plants when I is coming, with your permission, of course. Then we is having an everlasting supply of this food. We will plant them in your gardens. What a clever fellow you are, the Queen said. You are not very well educated, but you are really nobody's fool. I can see that. So that is the end of chapter 3. So if you need a moment to pause the video, to answer your questions in complete super fantastic sentences, go ahead. Now the final chapter. 2 questions, 3rd graders. In your own words, describe what happened after the giants were captured and placed in the hole. Who wrote this story and how do you know? I think you'll be quite excited to see that part. The author. Every country in the world that had been in the past had been visited by the foul man-eating giants, sent telegrams of congratulation and thanks to the BFG and to Sophie. Kings, presidents, prime ministers, rulers of every kind showered the enormous giant and the little girl with compliments and thank yous, medals, presents. The ruler of India sent the BFG a magnificent elephant. Remember, the BFG wanted to ride an elephant, or he wanted one? The very thing he had been wishing for all in his life. The king of Arabia sent them a camel each. The Lama of Tibet sent them a llama each. Wellington sent them 100 pairs of wellies each. Panama sent them beautiful hats. The king of Sweden sent them sweets and sweets. Jersey sent them pullovers. There was no end to the gratitude of the world because the BFG and Soph, they saved the world. They're heroes. The queen herself gave orders that a special house with tremendous high ceilings and enormous doors would immediately be built in the Windsor Great Park next to her own castle for the BFG to live in. And in a pretty little cottage was next door was Sophie. The BFG's house was to have a special dream storing room with hundreds of shelves, as it were, he could put his beloved dream bottles. What is more, he was given the title, the Royal Dream Blower. He was allowed to go galloping off to any place in England on any night of the year to blow his splendid fizz wizards in through the windows to the beautiful sleeping children. And letters poured into his house by the millions from children begging him to pay them a visit. Meanwhile, tourists from all over the globe came flocking to gaze down in wonder at the 9 horrendous man-eating giants in the great pit. They came especially at feeding time when the snozcumbers were busy throwing down to them by the keeper. And it was pleasure to listen to the howls and growls of the horror coming from the pits as the giants chewed up the horrible tasting vegetables. There was only one disaster. 3 silly men who had been trying to peek at the giants decided to climb over the high fence surrounding the pit, and of course they fell in. There were yells of delight from the giants below, followed by the crumping of bones. The head keeper immediately put a sign up that says, "It is forbidden to feed the giants." And after that, there were no more disasters. The BFG expressed a wish to learn how to speak properly, and Sophie herself, who loved him as she would a father, volunteered to give him lessons every day. She even taught him how to spell and how to write sentences, and he turned out to be a splendid, intelligent pupil. In his spare time, he read books. He also started to write essays about his past life. When Sophie read some of them, she said, "These are very good. I think perhaps one day you would be a great writer." "Oh, I would love that," cried the BFG. "Do you think I could?" "I know you could," Sophie said. "Why don't you start by writing a book about you and me?" "Very well," the BFG said. "I'll give it a try." So he did. He worked hard on it, and in the end, he completed his book. Rather shyly, he showed it to the queen. The queen read it to her grandchildren. Then the queen said, "I think we ought to get this book printed properly and published so that other children can read it." This was arranged, but because the BFG was a very modest giant, he wouldn't put his own name on it. He used somebody else's name instead. But where, you might ask, is this book that the BFG wrote? It's right here. You've just finished reading it. So now you know who the author is. What a great story. So now, 3rd grade, I am going to show you 2 different options for book reports. The first one is going to be to draw an enormous, colossal BFG. And here's an example, and I drew one I'm going to show you in a second. Make his vest. On one side, write how the BFG was at the beginning of the story. You know, talk about him at the beginning. And then the other side of the vest, write how he was at the end of the book. On his left shirt sleeve, write the character's name, the title of the book, and the author. Then on the right shirt sleeve, write your name and date. On his pants, write 5 adjectives on each leg that describe the character. So this is like a character book report. On his belly, write your favorite part and then add some props to your character. So here's one choice that you could do. Your other choice is to design a movie poster for the book. And here are some things it must include: book, title, and author, your name, of course, a colorful illustration, quotes to recommend the book, movie rating, because all movies are rated. Who would you do as the movie cast? And I'm going to explain what I picked. The premiere date, when is it going to come out? And the number of stars you would give the movie. All right, so here are my examples. Okay, here is my BFG. And here's, like I said, your favorite part goes in the middle. How he was at the beginning is on this side. How he was at the end, it goes on that side. Character, title of book, your name and date, adjectives that describe your character. And if you want to do Sophie, you can do Sophie too. And then I added some props: his trumpet, a snozcumber, and a dream jar. So this is one option, third grade, that you could do for a book report. The other option is a movie poster, and I did that as well. So I have my author up there. Here's my illustration. It's supposed to be his foot with little Sophie looking up. Remember, like Miss Bottone said, I'm not an art teacher, but I did my best. I put Dwayne Johnson as the BFG. I'm sure you all know him. He is The Rock, and I thought he's just such a great actor that I wanted him to play the giant. Kingston Foster as Sophie. Disney's, you know the movie Zombies? She's the little sister, Zed's little sister. I think she's such a great actress, so how awesome would she be to play Sophie? I picked a quote from the book: "Dreams is full of mystery and magic. Do not try to understand them." One of the quotes from The Big Friendly Giant. My title, I gave it 5 stars. I rated it G, have my name on it. It's going to premiere August 4th. Now, what I thought was kind of cool is I wrote "coming soon to a drive-in near you," because we know right now movie theaters aren't open, but I do think drive-ins are going to be opening up. So it will premiere in August in the drive-in. So here are my 2 different options for a book report. I hope you will pick one and have fun with it. And I hope you enjoyed the book. Mrs. Faulkner and I had a great time doing it with you. And one of our most precious dreams is to see you all soon and for all of us to be back in school. Thanks for watching, Huskies.